Hello world, why is Kobe beef so famous and so expensive? To find out, we'll visit Usanaga Cattle Farm to see how they're raised, before going to a wholesale market where they're auctioned off, and then tasting the deliciousness that is Kobe beef. But where does the name even come from? In 1868, Kobe opened up its port, and legend has it that an Englishman was craving steak, but Japanese were not used to eating meat, and he couldn't get any. So sad. After much hassle, he was able to convince farmers to butcher cattle used for farm work. He found it incredibly tasty, word quickly spread, and arriving sailors began asking for Kobe beef, and that name has been famous since then. Even the basketball player Kobe Bryant was named after the beef.
My parents must have been smoking some really crazy I'll tell you. No, I'm being serious. They sat down at a Japanese restaurant and they looked at the menu and they saw the name Kobe and they were like, oh, that's a cool name. Oh yeah, let's do it.
The thing is, there's actually no cattle called Kobe beef. And to explain, we need a little lesson in Japanese cattle. Kobe beef comes from cattle called Wagyu, which literally means Japanese cow. Wagyu. Although not all cattle in Japan are Wagyu, as there are foreign breeds, which would be labeled Kokusangyu, are domestically produced beef. Wagyu comes from ancient Japanese cattle used for farm work. Between 1868 and 1919, domestic and foreign cattle were crossbred. However, crossbreeding was stopped because they wanted to preserve the uniqueness of Wagyu. And there are 4 main breeds, but 90% of them are the black cattle called Kuroge. Of those Kuroge, there's a strain called Tajima-gyu, which needs to conform to certain criteria to be called that. They must be born, raised, fatted, and slaughtered in the prefecture of Hyogo. They need to be kind of old, relatively speaking. In America, cattle are generally slaughtered when they're 14 to 16 months. Tajima-gyu, on the other hand, needs to be at least 28 months. And finally, Tajima-gyu needs a yield score of A or B and a meat quality rank of 2 or higher. Don't worry, I'll explain the grading system later. So that's Tajima-gyu. Kobe beef is simply Tajima-gyu that conforms to even stricter standards. It must be a heifer or a steer. A heifer being a female who has never given birth, a steer a male who's been castrated. It mustn't weigh more than 500 kilograms. It needs a yield score of A or B and a meat quality score of 4 or above, and a beef marbling score of 6 or higher. You do all that, and you got yourself some Kobe beef. To see where cattle bound to be Kobe beef are raised, we visited Usanaga Farm. In the breeding system, there are 2 types of farms. The first is where the cattle are born, and after around 100 days, they go to the second, where they are fattened, which is here at Usanaga Farm. Walking among the stalls, I expected to smell crap. It is an animal farm, and you can, but the strongest smell was that of sake, which kinda confused me. But part of their feed is sake kasu, which is the leftover leaves from the sake making process.
メインとなる餌は自分たちで作ったお米をだいたい4割ぐらいあげて、他にはみりんかす、酒かす、山崎のウイスキーかすとかビールかすでおからとか、地元でできるだけ取れたものを今は7割ぐらい与えて飼育しております。こうやってこだわった餌をあげた牛が一番美味しいなと思ってます。
So I found out that while they don't drink alcohol, they do consume the lees, which are the dregs, the sediments, the leftovers from the alcohol making process. We asked about a couple other things we commonly heard about Wagyu, that they play classical music and give them massages.
ここでも出荷前とかやったら牛をブラッシングしてきれいにしたりとかするんで、音楽はここではしてないんですけど、してる農場も実際あります。ずっとかけてる人もいますし、餌の時間になったら音楽をかけて餌の時間を知らせる。
The cattle all seemed happy and very curious. The farmer, Usanaga-san, petted them as he walked along the stalls.
だから僕、自分が牛やったらっていうのを結構ポイントにして、自分が牛やったらこんなん食べたいやろなとか、食べたら嬉しいやろなとか、こういう環境やったらいいやろなっていう。
At these farms, they're usually raising hundreds of cattle. This would be microscopic in comparison to some US industrial farming, where you can find tens of thousands of cattle on a single feedlot. Another difference is that in the US, beef is generally sold as a commodity. When it gets to the slaughterhouse, cattle from the different feedlots are mixed up, and when you buy the meat, there's no way to know which farm it came from. With Wagyu, it's very different. Every cattle receives identification by air tags. No, not air tags, but air tags. And they also come with a birth certificate that includes their family tree and even a print of their nose. You know where the cattle have been every step of the way, and Taiji Wagyu and Kobe beef additionally come with a certificate verifying their DNA. This means that there's incentive for breeders to raise the best cattle they can. Once the cattle are fully grown, they're sent to a wholesale market to be auctioned off. Upon entering, we had to don a hairnet, mask, and coat. It felt like we were scrubbing up for surgery.
It's good. No.
肉
We used the rubber boots provided, but for those who wanted to use their own footwear, they had this shoe sealing machine that would wrap them in plastic. The next step was taking an air shower like you would do before entering a clean room. I thought Akko was trying to be cute, spinning around, but you're supposed to turn around to get air cleaned on all sides. And for the very last step, we needed to sanitize our footwear in this reddish solution. If you've never been to a butcher with hanging carcasses, these next scenes may come as a shock to you. Here we're entering a huge refrigeration zone where potential buyers inspect the carcasses they're about to bid on. By this point, they've already been graded and stamped accordingly. You'll see several things, like the grade, this one's A5, the Kobe beef chrysanthemum, or the Taiji Wagyu stamp. There's also the geographical indicator, the GI seal, that ensures the cattle are indeed from a specific geographical region, like how Champagne is only from the Champagne region of France. I found it fascinating to see how lights were used to look at the fine details of marbling. For the auction, there were seats set up with electronic remotes for voting, kind of like some city council meeting. Since this section is also refrigerated, there are blankets set out to fight off the chill. There weren't enough seats for everyone, and some had to stand. It felt a bit like a classroom, as some bidders were busily scribbling notes. I couldn't follow along with the speed of the auctioneer, but it was easy enough to see the current bids on the big screen above. You can hear the auctioneers yell out, "Kobe beef!" or "Taiji Wagyu!" every single time two new halves of the cattle are brought out. And then they lit up the cattle with their lights, because apparently the spotlights shining on them wasn't enough. So as to understand the bidding a bit better, let's get into the grading system for the cattle. The letters represent the amount of meat you can harvest from the cattle. A has the highest yield, while C has the lowest. The numbers 1 through 5 represent the quality of the meat, with 5 being the highest. The marks are based on the degree of marbling, firmness and texture, color, quality, and other factors. A5 is considered the best you can get. But there's also the BMS number, the beef marbling score, that goes from 1 to 12. Cattle with 12 marbling is the absolute highest. If you look at the grading system, an A5 steak can have a BMS from 8 all the way to 12, so not all A5s are the same. At the auction in November, the lowest average price was 3,150 yen per kilogram for an A4 with a BMS of 5. Since it was Taiji Wagyu, the price wasn't as high as similarly ranked Kobe beef. The highest price was A5 Kobe beef with a BMS of 8, which averaged 4,770 yen per kilogram. The grand prize winner was A5 Kobe beef with a BMS of 12, which averaged 4,700 yen per kilogram. The farmers are prominently displayed, and I think this goes to show that people are paying more for farmers whose meat they enjoy versus getting the absolute highest score, like what the prize winner achieved.
今日見てもらったら分かると思うんですけど、やっぱ A5 ランクの12番っていうのが高く評価されるんで、農家さんはやっぱそこを目指してしまうんですけど、実際消費者が求めてるお肉って別にサシいらないって多分なってきてると思うんですよ。でそれは多分海外でも一緒で、なんでなんかその辺がちょうど今分岐点に来てるかなと思って、だから僕たちなんかは割ともう A5 ランクは全然目指してなくて、もう食べて美味しかったらそれでいいやっていう結論になってるんですけど、
国内でもA5ランクのお肉っていろいろ近くでいうと近江牛、松阪牛ってあるんですけど、この脂がしつこくないっていうもう代表的なのはもう神戸ビーフが一番です。
To put pricing into context, the prize-winning beef weighed 465.2 kilograms, which at 4,700 yen per kilogram works out to over 2 million yen. This used to be like $50 per kilogram, or about $20,000. But at current exchange rates, it's more like $30 per kilogram or $15,000 for the whole cattle. Once the beef leaves the auction floor, they're immediately packed up and sent to the buyers. There's a butchering section that we weren't able to film, but certain buyers get the beef shipped to them as is and butcher it themselves. Overall, the place was incredibly clean, and seeing the whole process assured you that the safety and quality of the meat was top-notch. Now it was time to eat. Along Ikuta Road, you'll find many steak houses. I was both sad and excited to eat Kobe beef teppanyaki style, where they cook it in front of you on a flat grill. I mean, I had just seen the cattle earlier that day. But honestly, when I saw the small cuts of meat, my mind disassociated with it. At Moriya, they have the bronze plaque that signifies they're authorized to sell Kobe beef. We were fortunate enough to get the whole restaurant to ourselves, which makes it so much easier to film. Asking what the best way to try Kobe beef was, the general answer was as untouched as possible, seasoned with only salt and maybe some pepper, so that's how it was prepared.
そのまま僕下味つけてますのでそのままでも美味しくいただけます。
はい、じゃあいただきます。
But before we see Ako's reaction, let's watch how the chef prepares the ribeye. Every single part of it is used. You'll notice the chef uses the fat to cook the vegetables, which makes them extra delicious.
This このまま最初に、はい、いただきます。美味しいです。
食レポは？
食レポできない。初めて食べる。本当に油がしつこくないです。
神戸ビーフの一つの特徴ですね。油しつこくないというのはすごいオレイン酸という成分をすごい多く含んでますので、すごいあっさりとした油というか、ですからステーキで召し上がっても美味しいっていうのが神戸ビーフの一つの理由ですね。
Something that surprised me was that the different parts of the ribeye had different textures and flavor. So it was one cut, but you were able to enjoy a variety of gastronomic experiences.
ここの最後に部位なんですけど、そちらはリブロースにしかついてないすごい霜降りがきめ細かく入ったすごい柔らかい部位でございます。
本当だ、全然違うぞ。すごい美味しい。
こちらのお茄子はお肉の神戸ビーフの脂を含まして焼いてますので、すごい美味しく仕上がってます。
Normally, I don't like nasa, but this nasa cooked this way is really tasty. As I said before, they use every single part, including absolutely all the fat. For the final round, they stir-fried bean sprouts, which of course were delicious. We were only supposed to get one steak, but because we were focusing on filming, we weren't eating the steak hot, and I really wanted to taste what it was like eating it nice and hot. So we went with the chef's recommendation of trying the filet, his personal favorite, and also the most expensive. We ate it right after it was cooked, and what an explosion of flavor in your mouth.
It's so good, everything's so good.
You can really tell why Kobe beef cooked this way is so famous. It's quite an experience and definitely something I would splurge on for a special meal. And actually, today happened to be a special occasion, as it was Ako's birthday and the chef was kind enough to make her a special dessert plate. Happy birthday!
はい、ありがと
How old are you?
う。言えない。26ぐらいにしとこうかな。
26 kurai. Oh. When researching Kobe beef, there were two other popular methods besides teppanyaki that showed up: sukiyaki and shabu shabu, which both use thin slices of beef. Before the sukiyaki is cooked, you need to make sure you have your raw egg ready to dip it into. The beef in sukiyaki is cooked in a sauce made from sugar, sake, and soy sauce. Cooking is usually done in the kitchen, but they were kind and gave us the VIP filming treatment and cooked it for us at our table.
So this will be a test because usually I don't eat raw eggs, but you got to do it the right way. So. Umai. It's really tasty. And I don't mind the raw eggs, even though I normally would never eat it like this. Oh, do you want to see the? Okay.
いただきます。すごい贅沢食いだよ。 せーの。おいしい。
You're getting better at your reactions, Akko.
あー、おいしい。
For shabu shabu, there's a light broth where you take the thin slices and quickly cook it yourself. The server did the first slices for us. The beef is then dipped in a sauce, which today was ponzu and goma. No.
おいしい。柔らかい。何も言えないね。ごちそうさまでした。
ね？
おいしいね。もう。
As you may have noticed, both Akko and I are bad at giving reactions to food. I don't know how those food YouTubers do it. Having eaten teppanyaki previously, I can say that it was harder to appreciate Kobe beef when it's eaten in this manner, as I think the sauces cover up a lot of the meat's flavor. It was good, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't nearly as wow an experience as eating it teppanyaki style. Now, if you're looking to eat Kobe beef, by far the best place to do it is in Hyogo Prefecture, where I read that 80% of it is sold. Although they've been expanding their market over the past decade, so it's getting easier, and maybe that percentage isn't as high. To make sure you're getting the real deal, they have a website that lists all the places that are authorized to sell the real thing. And if you ate Kobe beef outside of Japan before 2011, you were definitely not getting the real deal, as they only started exporting it out of the country that year.
海外で神戸ビーフを取り扱う場合は神戸肉流通推進協議会の指定登録店に加盟していただいて、で海外も同じようにブロンズ像を店頭に飾っていただく。
Kobe beef is arguably the most famous beef in the world, and people generally say it's the most expensive. But I've found stories saying that other steaks, like the 2000 vintage Côte de Boeuf, can cost $3,200. Only one butcher in the world sells it though, so it's incredibly rare. But if you're looking at the most expensive steak that you as a regular person can probably get your hands on, I think it's Kobe beef. At Moriya, where we ate in Kobe City in November, the price for the filet was 17,580 yen for 90 grams, while the ribeye was 16,950 yen for 150 grams. In USD, that's about $120, but it would have been much more expensive a few years back when 100 yen equaled $1 US. All in all, the next time I go back to Kobe, I plan to eat Kobe beef teppanyaki style once again. While I consider myself incredibly lucky that my job entails getting to eat such delicious food, it's honestly hard to fully enjoy and appreciate when you're busy getting the shot. But hey, I'm not complaining. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Peace. What's eating steak like where you're from?
あ、これは。すいません。じゃあ溶きます。これ普通にこう
一本抜いていただくと。
抜くんですか？
一本抜けないですか？
いい
あ、もう大丈夫です。はい、大丈夫です。
うんうんうんうんうん。